all his customers had just disappeared. He was in a position where he couldn't pay his suppliers, he couldn't pay his staff, and he couldn't even pay his mortgage. And he was just feeling incredibly depressed and despondent over it. It was creating problems in his marriage, his business was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he was destroying his family's good name. So, at the end of one really hard day where he had a couple of customers say, look, we can't afford your services anymore, we just have no money ourselves. And he realised that most of his investments had gone belly up as well. He walked down to Central Park just to have a little bit of time and space for himself. And he sat down on a park bench, slumped down, and just sat there and just thinking about, oh my God, what the hell can I do? And then he saw this old man wearing a top hat with a cane, beautiful suit and a cravat, sort of walking along rather sprightly, sat down next to him on the park bench. And he was curious, but he didn't say anything because he was just feeling so low. And the old man spoke to him and said, what can be so wrong? It's a beautiful day. Why are you feeling so upset? And he said, look, my business is almost destroyed. I've just lost everything in the big crash. And there doesn't seem to be anything I can do to save it. And the old man reached into his pocket, pulled out a little book, pulled out a pen, wrote something down on paper, folded it, gave it to him and said, well, take this and tell me what you do with it in a year on this bench. And the old man had got up and went off again, sort of with a sprightly step. So he was depressed, but he wanted to have a look at what this old man had given him. He thought it was some sort of message, it wouldn't mean very much. So he started folding up, and he saw 3 zeros with a comma in front of them. And he unfolded a bit more, and there were another 3 zeros with a comma in front of them. And he opened a bit further, and there was a 1 in front of that. And he finished opening up, and up in the corner it said, John B. Rockefeller. And it was a personal check. So immediately, he was shocked, but he was also energized. He suddenly said, my God, this is a lifeline. With this I can turn everything around. So he immediately went back to his office, and he sat down at his desk, and then he thought, no, I'm going to try and go as far as I can myself. So he took the check, he put it in his personal safe in his office, and then he went home to his wife and told her, I'm going to turn everything around. I found a new commitment. Didn't tell her about the check. He said, I'm going to turn this thing around. I'm going to make the business a success. So he went back the next day to work, told his staff, look, I know I can't pay you next month, but if you just hold on a little bit longer, I'm going to make everything turn around. And there was new confidence in his voice and in his step. And so they said, okay, there really are, the job's out there, so we will give you a month, because we need to survive as well. And he went to his suppliers and said, look, I know I can't pay you this week, but if you bear with me, I'm going to turn this thing around. And they grudgingly said, well, whether we get the money out of you this week or next week, if you don't have the money, we may as well give you the extra week. And then he started going out to his customers and offering them great deals, discounts, and deferred payments and other things to start the business turning around. And suddenly, over the next few months, his business started turning around. After about 3 months, it was operating, he was back at cash flow neutral, he was actually able to cover his bills, his employees were happy, his wife was relieved, they weren't going to lose the house, and they were sort of running all right. After 6 months, he was back up in the top 3 businesses in New York, printers in New York, so his business was starting to thrive. And then he had a bit of a reversal. He said, no, I'm not going to touch that check, I'm going to keep pushing forward. So after about 11 months, he was now the #1 printer in New York. His business had sort of weathered the downturn. It had brand new customers, new suppliers, he was moving into a new office, and his business was running very, very successfully, and he was confident and very positive in his outlook. And then the 12-year anniversary came round. So he took the check out of his vault safe, got into the car with his driver now, in his brand new suit, went down to Central Park and sat down on the bench and waited for the old man to come along. And waited for about an hour, and no one came along, waited for another hour. And then he heard a woman calling out, John, and he turned around, and there was a older woman dressed as a nurse who was calling out for someone named John. So he got up and walked over to her and said, excuse me, were you looking for John B. Rockefeller? I've been waiting for him on the bench. And she said, oh, sorry, I must apologise. Has John been pretending to be Rockefeller again? So, I guess that story has a number of different morals and interpretations, but the one I want to talk about today was congruency. Now, everybody looks for certain signs that someone is what they seem to be. They look for the way they dress, the way they carry themselves, the way their website is designed, and the way their business cards are written. If you want to be successful in business, the best thing to do is to have a lot of congruency around everything you do. That's why I'm dressed as I am. This is incongruent, and a couple of people have already commented on it this morning. And that was very, very deliberate, because I wanted to actually see how many people would actually explicitly say, well, a lot of people may have been thinking it, oh, he doesn't seem to be dressed for a business event this morning. But part of that was about actually teasing out, say, okay, you often know when something is incongruent, but you may not be able to put your finger on it.
Yeah.
But what's important if you want to be successful in business is to think about whether you have congruency in everything you say and do, so that it matches the business that you're seeking to build.